President Trump's big, beautiful bill has undergone some significant changes in the United States Senate. Can it pass the House, and what does it mean to you? And the president takes on Harvard, and Harvard fires back in court. Today, we take an in-depth look at their legal battle. Plus, incoming Jacksonville City Council President Kevin Carrico joins us to discuss his goals in the year ahead. All that on This Week in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Rick Mullaney, Shercliffe Executive Director of the Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute, and I'm filling in for Kent Justice today. He'll be back again next week. On July 1st, City Councilman Kevin Carrico will become the president of the Jacksonville City Council. He sat down earlier with Kent to discuss his upcoming term as president and the year ahead.
What do you want to accomplish? Because usually council president says, hey, here's my agenda. I'd like to make sure we address certain things.
Well, first, thanks for having me, Kent. It's always my pleasure to be here on Channel 4, the local station. When I go home at night, this is what I watch at 10 o'clock. Don't tell the other guys.
Thank you very much.
But have for quite some time. Yeah, it's a real honor to be elected by my peers as the incoming City Council President. I believe I will be the 57th President here in consolidated government, and I'm looking forward to getting to work and really putting my weight behind some things that I'm passionate about. And if anyone who knows me knows that my career has been with the Boys and Girls Club the last 10 years, extremely passionate about young people and youth and really the next generation. So when I look at my presidency, I got some buckets. It's faith, family, and future. Faith, that's just the guiding principles that got me here, so we don't want to forget that and lead with integrity and humility. Future, that's what I want to look at. It's the young people. It's really diving into some programming that I think can help young people reach their goals and their full potential, looking at a special committee on park programming. This council has invested over $100 million in capital projects in the last couple of years through a special committee on parks to enhance our parks and make them world-class spaces. But if we don't have the programming and the people in those parks that can really reach out, serve those kids and make an impact in their life, then we just have world-class parks with no momentum. Workforce development is another thing that's very passionate to me, and making sure that we equip our young people for their future. And what we can do here is partner with some of the best groups and agencies and organizations that can prepare our young people for a new economy, for a new job force and a new place that's different than when me and you grew up. One thing to really focus on is the digital divide. You know, we're looking at literacy rates at third graders. They're probably about, last time I checked, 49% of the young people in Duval County are reading at grade level at third grade. If we don't start teaching them the basics of technology and AI integration and really shaping them and getting them ready for the workforce, then we'll start to leave them behind in that field as well. I'm very passionate about downtown development, making sure that we have a world-class downtown that attracts tourism, that attracts economic growth and companies to come to our town, so we can increase that tax base and have more money in our budget for the vital things that of course we're going to look out for, which is public safety, making sure our JSO officers and JFRD have the cutting edge technology, everything they need to keep our community safe. Those are kind of the things that I'm outlining now as I look at the presidency. One is just going to be, I have to lead a group of 19 individuals, some of them with all of us really with strong personalities, right? Not too many non-type A people get elected into public office. So as the president, I get to lead that group, and I want to lead them the way a family would. You know, sometimes your own family, my daughter does things that aren't the greatest, and you know, sometimes there have to be motivations to
conversation with dad.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, we are a family. We might be dysfunctional when you see us up there from issue to issue. You know, we tend to have differing opinions, but at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time together. We are a family, so I feel like leading this group like a family, where we can have hard conversations, but have fun while we do it. You know, just have a good time and understand that what we do is real work. It's serious work. It's service to our community. But we gotta have fun and get along when we can, and when we disagree, let's do it without discord, and let's do it professionally.
Well, let me ask about this. When someone says, I've got these priorities, and we want to do these things, usually we have to come back to, and how are we going to pay for it? It brings up the topic of the budget.
Yes, sir.
Budget proposal comes in July, and then new budget goes into place, I believe, beginning of October or what have you. So where are we at on some of those things for you?
Sure. The Finance Committee will take a look at the budget real hard in the month of August. But I would like to see a zero balance budget. You know, the taxpayers pay into our system, and that's how we get our revenue. I'd like to see us spend what we bring in and not dip into the reserves. We got some hard times ahead. We haven't seen the exact budget projections that are coming out, but there's going to be some tough choices we're going to have to make.
It sounds like this is one of those seasons where revenue's maybe not going to be the same place it was in previous years.
Yeah, and to make it even more difficult on the revenue side, I think the taxpayers need a little relief. I would love to see a rollback rate get introduced by council and us to be able to pass that. And, the price or the value of people's homes has skyrocketed, which in turn has created a higher tax burden for them. And it's not because the council has raised taxes, it's just because property values have gone up. But when you're looking at those seniors and those people that live in my district, in District 4, that they're saying, hey, this house has been paid off, I'm on a fixed income, these taxes are through the roof, the insurance rates are through the roof, what can we do to help? I'd like to see if we can roll that rate back and maybe give some relief to the taxpayers.
Yeah, I'm interested because I recently did a story on Boys and Girls Club and obviously some recent successes and some nationwide recognition of what's happening in Jacksonville for Northeast Florida. Also, there's a connection to the revitalized Jacksonville journey. How would you characterize that effort, Boys and Girls Club, and what you just talked about in terms of maybe some prevention, some education, some things for young people to keep them from going toward criminal activities?
Yeah, sure. I'm looking forward to what the journey is going to bring. They've got the board formed and they're starting to have some meetings. Of course, the bulk of the work with young people happens through the Kids Hope Alliance, who's always been a great partner in making sure that young people have the services they need, whether it's after-school programs, summer camps. I love to see more of that. I love to see more intentionality on really looking at what are the issues that are holding our young people back and tackling those issues to set them up for success.
Yeah. You mentioned leading as a family, and if we're going to disagree, let's do it politely. Instant recently that I mentioned I was going to ask you about, Matt Carlucci, apparently there was something that happened and you said, hey, I'd like the Sergeant at Arms to intervene here.
Sure.
Is that a normal thing we'll see in Kevin Carrico's presidency, or is that just a one-off and, hey, we want to be calm as we do our business together on council?
Sure. I mean, it was well documented that Mr. Carlucci had some concerns, I guess, of the incoming leadership and leadership style, and we were in a busy committee with a short timeline, and he was getting frustrated and wasn't getting the time on the microphone I think he deserved. And when he started walking over toward me, I knew we needed to keep the meeting going, didn't want to create a huge scene, so I just mentioned to the Sergeant of Arms, hey, he's coming into my space, he's in a threatening area, so let's get him out of here and keep the meeting going.
Is it personal? No, it was just a moment of we just need to keep the meeting going?
Yeah, we just need to keep that meeting going. And, I've talked to Matt since. I sat next to him today in a finance committee. Things are cordial. We're moving on. That's how this has to happen. I mean, people are looking at my presidency and wondering what's going to happen with the mayor. Am I going to be some big villain to the mayor? And yes, we disagree sometimes on policy issues. I'm a Republican. She's a Democrat. We don't always agree on how to get there. But at the end of the day, I think both of us love this city. We love Jacksonville. I'm not going to do anything that's going to harm the ability to move Jacksonville forward to a world-class city. And at some point, we'll sit down and talk about it and see how we can work together. Yes, we're going to disagree. We're not going to always see things the same way, but I think there's a path forward to really putting Jacksonville first.
We appreciate the incoming City Council President joining us. President Trump's big, beautiful bill has undergone some significant changes, and it could affect you, the national debt, and much more. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville after this brief break.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. The stakes are high for what President Trump calls the big, beautiful bill, and what Democrats call the big, ugly bill. Here to discuss it is Jason Altmaier. Jason Altmaier is a former 3-term congressman, author, and president and CEO of career colleges and universities. He's received his PhD from the University of Florida, master's degree from George Washington University, and undergraduate school at FSU. He is also chair of the Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute Board of Advisors. Jason, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Rick.
Appreciate your expertise in Congress, in public policy, in teaching, and all you're doing. And last week, the U.S. Senate made some substantial changes to the bill. We want to talk about those. But front and center for this budget bill is taxes. How about describing that to our viewers, the key points in that budget bill and how the Senate may have changed that?
The tax cuts that President Trump had enacted in 2017 will expire at the end of 2025 unless Congress takes action to extend them. So the biggest part of this bill involves President Trump's tax cuts. There's a lot of other policy issues in there. It's being done through a reconciliation process. So in the Senate, usually you need 60 votes for a bill to come up for a vote, but with a reconciliation bill, which you can do one time a year, then you can put everything in the same bill. Everything has to have an impact on the federal budget. Clearly, taxation does. So I think it's inevitable that they will find a way to get this passed because they do want to extend President Trump's tax cuts. But there are a few items in the bill that have become controversial and could lead to a long delay.
So the 2017 tax cuts, there's sort of some consensus on the House and the Senate. But President Trump also campaigned on some additional tax cuts. That means for overtime, for tips, for doing away with taxes on Social Security. What about those in the House version and the Senate version?
It's in there, and I think it will pass. But what's interesting is you hear about no tax on tips, no tax on overtimes. That's not exactly what this bill does. These are tax deductions, which is different than no taxes, and they expire in 2028. At the end of 2028, of course, there's an election in November of 28. So these are not a long-term solution to the issue that they're trying to resolve, but it does address something that's of public concern and hits a constituency, especially in key states like Nevada, where that's a big issue.
How about Social Security in particular? A lot of seniors looking for no taxes on Social Security. What did the bill do with regard to Social Security? It
doesn't do much with regard to Social Security and Medicare, but with regard to no tax on tips, it's important to remember you still would have to report your federal income, you would have to pay your state taxes, and Social Security and Medicare taxes would still be removed from your check. So they've stayed away from Social Security and Medicare, but Medicaid has become a big issue.
I do want to address Medicaid, but I want to talk briefly or for a moment on what is maybe the biggest issue on taxes, and one that could potentially affect whether this bill passes or not, and that's state and local taxes, often referred to as SALT. How about describing that and what this bill contains, why it's so controversial?
Right, yeah, SALT's an acronym, state and local taxation. So for the big northeastern states, Midwest, even California, those are generally Democratic states, President Trump in 2017 limited to $10,000 the amount that you could deduct from your state taxes. Those are very high tax states: Illinois, New York, New Jersey, California, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania. So the representatives in the House who represent those states, that's a big voting block. But in the Senate, of course, every state has two. So those senators don't add up to the same size voting block as they do. And they're Democrats, so they're pretty much irrelevant in this aspect since it's a reconciliation bill. So it's all going to come down to the House. And some of these New York members in particular, Republican members, have held firm that they want it to raise to $40,000, which is a significant increase over $10,000. And I think that is an issue that could sink the bill if they can't resolve that.
That's a really big one, and it could potentially sink the bill. Big picture. The debt, currently about $37 trillion. Many believe we have a crisis. What does this bill do with regard to the debt?
Everyone who has scored this bill, most importantly, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which is the arbiter of these things, has said that it is approximately $2.7 to $3 trillion added to the debt. The reason for that, they do have some cuts, programmatic cuts across the board with a lot of things, but tax cuts do not pay for themselves. They have been found, they do generate, they stimulate economic growth, but the net result is a decrease in revenue to the federal government, which accumulates, according to this bill, up to $5 trillion. But when you remove the cuts that they have made, you end up with somewhere around 2.7 to 3 trillion.
Really big issue. And before we leave, we have to talk about Medicaid, because you said that's a really big issue. How about describing what this bill does and why that's potentially another one of those potential deal killers in Medicaid?
When you hear about the cuts in Medicaid, it is to programs that states utilize to increase their Medicaid funding. It's not cuts to direct individual recipients of Medicaid. It's important to understand that. So hospitals have kind of gamed the system. What they do is the federal government matches state Medicaid expenditures. So they have created a system where they tax hospitals, and then they use that revenue to pay hospitals out of Medicaid. They get a federal match for that, and then that money also goes to the hospitals. So they have limited the ability to do that. Under the Trump tax cuts, it was limited to 6% tax The Senate limits it to 3.5%. That's a huge amount of money, and the hospitals don't usually lose on things like this, so I think they're surprised. And then they also decreased the federal match on Medicaid expansion from 90% to 80%. Florida has not expanded, so it would not affect Florida.
Very short on time. You look in your crystal ball. Does this bill pass eventually?
I think it has to pass because President Trump's tax cuts, his signature issue, are in it. They expire at the end of this year. I think it'll pass by the end of this year.
Jason, that's the final word for just now. Thank you so much for being with us, for your insights and thoughts.
Thank you.
When we return, President Trump takes dead aim at Harvard, and Harvard takes the Trump administration to court. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
Welcome back. The legal battle between the Trump administration and Harvard is high stakes and in many ways unprecedented. Joining us to discuss it is Nathan Richardson, a Jacksonville native and law professor at the Jacksonville University College of Law. Professor Richardson received his BS in Foreign Service at Georgetown University and his law degree from the University of Chicago. He's published extensively and teaches constitutional law and administrative law in the Jacksonville University College of Law. Professor Richardson, thank you so much for being with us. This is a really, really big topic. And quite frankly, I don't know if the country's ever seen anything quite like this, with a president taking on an institution of higher education like this. So before we get into the specifics of the back and forth, how about the background? What happened here?
Thanks so much for having me back, Rick. It's great to be back. I think you're right. I think in many respects this is unprecedented. The president has effectively declared institutional war on an institution of higher education, one of the oldest in the country, with one of the largest, one of the greatest reputations in the country. That's through administrative means, that's through political means, through the bully pulpit, it's through legal means, and then depending on the outcome of the cases, maybe through extra legal means as well. In specifics and what is done, essentially the president sent a letter to Harvard with a list of demands. Those demands, there's a lot in it, but at a high level, those demands essentially demanded federal oversight of the core mission of the university. Things like hiring, things like admissions, things like curriculum. Really not something that the institution could accept, or frankly, any private business, I would suggest, would be able or willing to accept from the federal government. Harvard said no immediately, and the result has been, from the president's administration, a series of moves to attempt to bring Harvard into compliance. I can go into detail on what those are if you'd like.
No, I certainly want to address what he's done, but at least from the Trump administration's perspective, one big question is why? Why did they do this?
Sure, it's hard to say. I mean, if you look at their official reasons, they have specific complaints about diversity in hiring, about diversity in what they claim is diversity in admissions. They have specific complaints regarding protests that happened within the last couple of years related to the Israel and Palestine issue. In my personal view, this is bigger than that. That this is political opposition between the president and the MAGA movement against Harvard, who they view as an elite institution that has different goals, that is a center of political power in America, that they view as opposed to them.
Well, you mentioned a series of things, and they're really very significant, and certainly one of them was threatening the tax-exempt status, but that has not resulted in litigation just yet. However, I do want to talk to one that has resulted in litigation, and that is the cutting off of research funds and the billions of dollars. How about describing that, what Trump has done and what Harvard has done?
Sure. If you can look at this from Harvard's perspective or the Trump administration. From the Trump administration's perspective, like, look, if you zoom out, there's been three main things the Trump administration has done so far. One of them we talked about last time we were together, tariffs. The other two is significant cuts, not limited to what Elon has done with Doge, but other things to the federal government's programs, including research funding. And another is significant and targeted changes to immigration policy. Those latter two have been brought to bear against Harvard. Harvard, like every higher institution of higher learning, especially what we call R1 or research institutions, depends on federal funding to do research. That is an engine of economic and scientific development that has been in play in the United States since the Second World War. So a lot of federal money goes to these institutions. The Trump administration has essentially said, all the money that we promised to you, you're not going to get, and you're not going to get any more in the future. And has essentially done that by press release.
So Harvard then took them to court?
Harvard has taken them to court.
And
that's right. Harvard sued immediately. Not much has happened yet with the litigation in regard to funding. There have been some, Harvard has asked for what's called summary judgment, has asked to win at a preliminary stage. The judge did not immediately grant that, but did set an accelerated hearing. So I expect we'll have the first news from that case as soon as next month. I understand the hearings are going to take place in July.
So pending that, has the money been cut off so far?
No, my understanding is that the judge has allowed funding to go ahead for now, has issued a temporary restraining order. In the parallel case that we've got on immigration, where the Trump administration has essentially decertified Harvard's ability to enroll international students, there is, I'm sure that there's a temporary restraining order there that has allowed those students to continue to enroll for now, and the judge has recently extended it. Although, as the name indicates, that's a temporary order. We don't know yet where that case will go.
And that's the second lawsuit I did want to mention, and that is the ban on international students.
That's right.
Why is that so significant to Harvard?
It's significant to Harvard because Harvard has a large number of international students. They form a vital part of the intellectual community of the university, and they form a vital part of the financial tuition mix that Harvard brings in. Harvard and many other institutions of higher learning view international students as a critical part of what they do. It's been something that depend on intellectually and financially. Of course, an international student needs a visa to come to the United States, which means they need permission from the federal government. Congress has set up a program for that where you can get a student visa that has a special, you can't work, but you can, or you can't work most jobs, but you get to stay here longer than a tourist visa. And that's necessary. The president has essentially rescinded the certification, again, effectively by press release.
So we're a little short on time, but what does TRO mean, and can those students still come in the interim?
TRO is a temporary restraining order, and that does mean these students can come for now. We will see what happens in the future, but this is, like I said, institutional war aimed at Harvard through legal and apparently extra legal means.
10 seconds, your crystal ball. Does Harvard prevail in this litigation in the long run?
I think Harvard's going to prevail in the litigation, but that doesn't stop the president from being able to attack the institution in ways that are much harder for the courts to police. I think it'll be a long time before we see the end of this.
Jason, thank you so much for being with us, Professor Richardson.
You're welcome.
And thank all of you for joining us. Kent returns next week. Be sure to tune in then. I'm Rick Mullaney, Shercliffe Executive Director of the Public Policy Institute at Jacksonville University. Have a great day.
See why every day more people are choosing News 4 Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.